morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you are. Welcome to this program. Tonight, we'd like to deal with the issue of, can Zimbabwe have meaningful change without first implementing the democratic reforms? I'd like to start tonight with playing a video, a throwback to what Chamisa was promising just before the 2023 elections.
Borokoto Zimbabwe, nokuti hakuna munhu anomira kana denga raronga plan. Denga raronga plan, denga harifo iri. Plan yaMwari haifo iri. Ini ndatanga kugadzira cabinet. There is no way we are not going to form a new cabinet. There is no way we are not going to have a celebration. There is no way we are not going to have an inauguration. Let's start preparing for our inauguration. Let's start preparing for our celebration.
There we have it. Let's start preparing for inauguration. Of course, it didn't happen. Welcome to you, Benjamin.
Good evening to you. Thank you for having me on the show. And to our viewers, thank you for joining us.
Well, you had Chamisa there making his promise, bold promise. This has been planned by God himself, so it's going to happen. And of course, it didn't happen. Can Zimbabwe have a meaningful change, in your opinion, without implementing the democratic reforms? That's the topic I would like to address tonight.
Firstly, when we talk about change, it depends what change we are talking about exactly. I mean, we have already seen, change where we had the former president, which is RG Mugabe, when was ousted by his lieutenant, Mnangagwa, once his lieutenant Mnangagwa. That we can say is change, right? But then if we need to define exactly, like you are rightfully saying, meaningful change, such that we cannot have we start enjoying democratic space, we start enjoying the freedoms, the human right freedoms that we are supposed to enjoy as humanity. Then I would say we need to have reforms in place that will guide the whole process, or rather will be a benchmark to show us how we can attain what we call democracy. The idea of democracy, we like it, let me say, but how to actually get to that place where we can say we are enjoying democracy, I think we are far from understanding it.
Yeah. Well, in this particular case, yes, I was talking of meaningful democratic change. And in this particular case, I think what we need to focus on is why we have failed to have any meaningful democratic change in Zimbabwe. The reality is, as long as Zanu PF retains the carte blanche dictatorial powers to rig elections, there will be no meaningful change in Zimbabwe. That is the reality that most people out there fail to realize. as long as Zanu PF has the dictatorial powers to rig the elections, there will be no meaningful change. What has been happening these last 23 years, when people have made a conscientious effort to elect an opposition and then give them the task of implementing the democratic reform. What has happened during those 23 years is that the people themselves have been very slow in realizing what is it really that needs to be done. And I think that's point number one. And so when the opposition, MDC, CCC, failed to implement even one meaningful reform in those 23 years, the people have failed to realize that MDC have failed them. And so this is why I played this video where Chamisa is telling his followers, we are going to have change. We are going to have, I'm preparing for a new government. He was just calling them to participate in the 2023 elections when he knew he had not implemented even any meaningful reform to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. And so we are caught up in this vicious cycle. And I honestly think many people there believed him that he was going to win those 2023 elections without even understanding what it will take to win those elections. And so we didn't have any change.
Well,
I was going to follow up to you is that at the present moment, I really don't see any sign that people learned a lesson from last year, for instance.
that is exactly what I wanted to say. When you said that, people believed him, then I honestly still believe people believe him right now. I mean, this is evident with, the moment, I know it's very unpopular with most of the viewers that are listening right now when we talk about, what Chamisa has promised and what he has delivered. And what he has delivered right now is nothing. A lot of people would not want to hear such a statement, but this is the truth. All he has done is promise day in and day out and delivered nothing tangible at all. But my main issue, especially with us as Zimbabweans, as a people, is, when we're looking at change, what are we looking for exactly? Because, like I gave an example in the first instance to say we have already had change. We saw Mugabe go out and Mnangagwa come in. We can always see Mnangagwa go out and Chamisa come in, right? But is that change? No, it's not change. Why? Because the political, environment in our country is so toxic. What is to stop him from being the next Mnangagwa? Right? We need to change the atmosphere first, the environment, such that it would be easy for us if he's not the ideal candidate or does not deliver on any of the promises. Look, ED came in and he made his promises. Zimbabwe is open for business. Right now, the ease of doing business in Zimbabwe is so hard, not for foreigners, for you and I that are inside Zimbabwe right now, right? It's all talk. Politicians love to promise, and they will promise you heaven on earth and deliver very, very little. So we do not want to create another Mugabe. We do not want to create another ED. How do we stop that? That is the change that we are supposed to be looking for. Not to say change in leadership. That doesn't it doesn't cut it. This is why I always encourage my fellow Zimbabweans. Let's think for ourselves.
Yeah, but the last point I was going to make there is that what has stopped the opposition implementing the reforms is greed. People have got to understand that the opposition, MDC, CCC, had the golden opportunity to implement the reforms, particularly during the GNU. They failed to do so out of greed. Mugabe bribed them with trappings of high office, and they forgot all about it. And they've been participating in flawed elections ever since, out of greed. This quotation from David Coulter's book is one I've often referred to, but I think it is important. Unless people really digest it and understand that the opposition have been participating in these flawed elections, which they themselves admit they are flawed, they are illegal. And the only logical thing to do is to stop participating in them. But they cannot because of greed. People have got to understand that. And in this case here, if you want free, fair, and credible election, you cannot expect Zanu PF to implement those reforms to ensure elections are free, fair, and credible. Because Zanu PF, of course, will not want to implement reforms and reform themselves out of office. And now they've got a partner in the opposition in the form of MDC, CCC, or whatever new name they're going to give themselves. They are willing to participate in these flawed elections, con their own supporters into participating so that Zanu PF at the end of the day has legitimacy. And as long as Zanu PF gets legitimacy, there will be no meaningful change. I think that, to me, is the most important message. And I think it's a message that needs to be hammered in. Some people seem to believe that the opposition or Chamisa and company should win the elections. The first step is to implement the reforms so that the elections are free, fair, and credible. Only then do you have a chance of winning. This argument by people like Chamisa that they are going to win rigged elections is the most nonsensical argument one can have. And it's a pity that many people out there are conned into believing it. Without reforms, the opposition will never win the elections. With reforms, they stand a chance. And so the most important thing is to get an opposition leaders who will focus on implementing the reforms so that elections are free, fair, and credible. So to come back to the question, can there be any meaningful change in Zimbabwe without first implementing the democratic reforms? My answer to that is not a chance. None. Zero. These promises that people like Chamisa are giving, that they can win, they are going to win elections and God is in it and so forth, those are just ways of conning people to participate because they need the people to participate to give Zanu PF legitimacy, and they will get their own reward in the form of a few gravitran seats. That is the message I would like to leave with the people today. Benjamin, do you want to give your concluding remarks?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I agree with you, and sadly, you find out that the call for reforms has been like an afterthought. After, telling and promising, yeah, we are going to win. And then, maybe as a closing remark, then, oh, by the way, there are reforms, we will implement the reforms. I don't see even if Triple C were to win, of which it's impossible, basically. But let's say if what people say, if Triple C were to win, do you actually think Triple C will implement the reforms themselves that will get them out of power, that will make Zimbabwe a democratic nation? I don't think so. I don't believe so. Right. So we if you look at the pattern, what it has left Zimbabwe is we have always, for the past 23 years, we have been gearing up for the next election. We have just finished another election. 2023 elections are done. Here is coming another blue bus. We are already wanting to hop on to go to 2028 for another election. What has changed from the previous elections? We do not stop to ask those questions. We just hop on, not knowing the destination that it will take us. And we know the destination. It's a big disappointment. And then they will, con us into believing into another thing. And it will always be the same thing over and over again until we realize that, for us to enjoy democracy, there are necessary or fundamentals that we have to follow. And the first one, that is, we need to create an environment that is conducive for free, fair, and credible elections. And without reforms, that is impossible. I don't know how. It may not be popular because Chamisa has not said it. But if you want to think for yourself, how do you think we can, I would ask the viewer, how do you think we can also enjoy democratic, space, enjoy democracy, enjoy the freedoms that we are supposed to have as human beings? That's my conclusion.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. So, with those closing remarks, I would say to the viewers, good night. And if you can join us tomorrow, we'll have another subject to pick to discuss.